Hey friends, and welcome back to another episode of the On the Table podcast. This is where each week we bring four Christians together to discuss matters which are on the table. So the aim of the podcast is to help us not only think Christian things, but rather how do we turn what we believe into action. So the podcast aims to answer the question, how can we take the theological truths we profess and believe and apply them into our everyday live. So we have three amazing guests with me on the table. I can kick us off with introductions. My name is Toye. I'm from Birmingham. I love TV. I love sitcoms right now. If you haven't watched it, watch Superstore. It will change your life. I love sport and I love all things theology. That's pretty much me. Who's next? Who wants to introduce themselves?
My name is Heike. Faith. I am a lover of many things. So I like to cook, I like to bake, I like to make things. So I'm really big on like DIY and doing things yourself. So yeah, that's me.
I have to ask, what's your go-to meal to cook?
Oh, to cook. That's difficult. It depends on how I'm feeling, but I like spicy food. So have you ever been to Wagamama? You know, like the firecracker. The firecracker from Wagamama. You know what? All right, okay. Well,
I bet people like spicy food like suffering. There's no
there
need.
is no suffering in eating. It's the best thing ever. It's the best thing ever. But I like rice as well, so it's basic.
Nice to meet you.
Hi everyone, my name is Deborah. I'm from Manchester. My interests, the usual stuff, makeup, fashion. I'm learning photography. Yeah, that's me. I don't like spicy food.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. Lovely to be part of this episode. I like spicy food, and I'm looking forward to a really interesting discussion.
Cool. Nice to meet all of you. So today we have on the table the topic of singleness, right?
Did you sigh before you?
Because singleness it's one of those topics that we just never really kind of talk about. It's not as popular. Like everyone loves relationships, right? We talk about it all the time. I mean, we did a podcast about it last week. Every church, every society, every fellowship, everyone just loves to talk about relationships. And what doesn't get spoken about as much, with as much vim or as much passion, is this idea of singleness that probably more experience faced than relationships currently with lockdown anyway. But it's probably a good place to start there. So why do you guys think there's this like passion or zeal when it comes to talking about relationships, especially in our culture and our age group? It seems to be the hot topic on everyone's tongue. Why do you think we're also obsessed with relationships?
I think because the generation before us raised us to be obsessed with relationships. I feel like as a girl as well, like growing up, I feel like you're told, yeah, when you grow up, you get married, have kids, blah, blah, blah. So it's like that's just a part of life and you're expected to just do that. And you have no choice but to make that happen. So I think, and obviously with things like Disney and the books that you read and the cartoons that you watch and films that you watch when you're growing up, like relationships and romance and all that stuff it's just in your face, like you can't avoid it. So I think we then grow up becoming a little bit obsessed with relationships, I think.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that, especially the Disney stuff. I know for me personally, I'm really big on like romantic movies and stuff. So I think I've personally bought into this whole idea. You find someone, you guys get along, and it's all roses and it's just nice. So I think that really has a big part to play in it, just the way that we think that relationships will make us feel once we enter them. It's like, oh, when it happens, it's going to be amazing. It's just like when you were younger, you were like, oh, I can't wait to grow up and be 25. I think it's the same thing with relationships. It's like, oh, I can't wait to have someone that I can do things with and go out with and, you know, cook for and clean for or whatever it is that you want to do. So I think it's a lot to do with what we can gain from relationships.
Yeah, no, I definitely hear that. And did you guys think that kind of culture was bled into the church, where in the Christendom, there was also pressures, especially people around that kind of 20 to 25-year-old mark, to kind of be in a relationship? Would you agree, or have you kind of felt that as well, where you feel pressured as to if you're not by a certain age dating, there's a problem somewhere.
Yup. Yeah, like you said, like once you reach a certain age, definitely in the church, definitely at home, there's just a certain pressure of like, when are you gonna get married? Like, especially like after you finish uni, like the next thing is marriage. So there's definitely that pressure from parents, from not really from friends, but just from society. That's kind of the next thing to do in life. Like the box that you tick is now to get married. So when you haven't done that, or especially when you're single and you're not even in a relationship that's heading towards marriage, it's almost like there's a problem here. Like we need to start doing something to get you married. So yeah, there's definitely a lot of pressure.
I would love to know if this is a kind of girl thing or a boy thing, because, you know, as guys, and it'd be great to get Toye's thoughts as well. I don't feel the pressure right now. There might be a couple of aunties who've been like, "Oh, Michael, you know, whatever," but it's literally minimal. You know, my mum's kind of like, "Yeah, keep going, like keep trying to change the world, keep doing your thing." Like that's kind of what I get. I don't know what your
I'm very much the same. Like my mom is actually pushing me away from being in relationships, which is so crazy. Like if I was to tell my mom I'm seeing someone, she would flip out and be like, "You're too young. Take some more time." My dad is of the mindset, wait till you're 35. Like my dad got married at 34. He's very old-fashioned. Say wait till you're 35. You're doing well in your career, then start thinking about relationships. So I'm not sure if it's a guy thing or maybe it's just kind of my personal experience. I guess similar to you, Mike. But there's legit no, especially from parents, friends, aunties in church. I don't really hear that on my side.
And that's unfair, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, yes, that's so unfair. Go on. No, you go.
I mean, yes, it is unfair, but I think it's also dependent on who you're around. So personally, I don't feel any pressure. Like similar to your mom, my mom's just like, relationships are not the best. They're stressful, and I can't have no guy stress your life out. So for me, I don't feel the pressure. Similar to Michael, I have some aunties that would literally sit me down and be like, "What's wrong?"
Let's talk
about
it.
like, yeah, literally, you stop chasing the boys away. And I'm like, "What boys?" Like, no, honestly, what boys am I actually chasing away? But I think in general, women do feel pressure, especially when we start talking about this biological clock thing. And like, do you not want to have kids? And if you want to have kids, you need to start dating now so you can, like, I don't know, have kids soon. But I think it also depends on who you're around.
Yeah. Okay, Helen.
So I think with my parents, there is some kind of pressure there, but my dad's fine, but it's more so my mum. And she has a strong opinion that, like, as a woman, you kind of, your purpose is to get married, have children. So I feel like until you do that, to be honest, I don't think she sees an option B. Like, that's the only thing. Like that's just the default. That's just the way life is. So like, I'll be having a conversation with my mum, and out of the blue, she'll be like, "So do you have a boyfriend?" Or like when we were allowed outside, if I was like dressed up to go meet my friend, she'd be like, "Are you going on a date?" Like, I literally, my mum's all about it. Like, she's on my neck about it. So I do get some pressure from her, but
yeah, I think one key thing you said is like, it's almost like you're not a woman until you're married and you have kids, right? So it's just this idea that women only become women when they're married and have kids, when they have a husband to cater to and kids to look after. If you don't have that, I remember my brother, he did something really amazing. And as Africans do, you pray, you go to the place, you pray, and then they started praying for me, and they're like, "Unfit, you marry, you this, you that." And I was like, I didn't even say amen, because I said,
you don't even say amen, but you just get fed up.
I said, people are buying houses, and
me,
like, I'm
the
getting married.
Point is about a husband.
Like, I'm actually getting married. That's the only thing that matters in this life. And I was like, no, I have other dreams and aspirations. I have other things that I want to do. But yeah, I just thought I'd point that out.
I find it so interesting because obviously, when people say stuff like our society is obsessed with kind of relationships and stuff like that, we all know why. The whole world is literally built around households, which are two people coming together. even folks who are the same sex, get into a civil partnership. Even the state is really interested in, in people coming together because it's the kind of safest way to build society. I think back to, you want to get a joint account, it's safer. You want to get a mortgage, it's better with two people. Everything is just like two. It's almost as if we're going on to Noah's Ark or something. Anyways, so I get that. But a part of me feels, though, that we've really also distorted that Genesis point. The Adam was alone. Yeah. And then God said it's not good for man to be alone, and said he would fashion a help meet, Genesis 2, somewhere in Genesis 2. And I just think people have taken that and just translated it as, the only thing that comes to me is like an Oscar Wilde quote. He famously said a couple of things about relationships. He said, everything in the world's about power, or something like that, about sex. Apart from sex is about power. Yeah. He also said the only known sexual perversion is celibacy, which is a bit strong, right? And so, he didn't like singleness, clearly, right? He thought you ought to be in a relationship. But we've translated, I think, that Genesis 2 to kind of mean if you're single and if you're alone, you're somehow not whole. And I think that's what we've taken that to mean as a kind of culture. I think that's a fair assumption to make, that most people in the world think if you're alone, you're lonely. Something's not quite complete yet. And so what people believe would be at odds with what Paul expressly spoke about, or even how Paul lived his life. So I'm really interested to find out how in the church we've also adopted that mind frame where people who are single, who choose a life of singleness, whether it's nuns or it's fathers or whatever, or just ordinary people, we just think something's not quite, something's missing from their life, or they're not complete until they find somebody. Don't know how that's happened, but I do think that's happened.
Yeah, I definitely agree. And I do think that there has become this stigma in the church when it comes to single people, especially those who might be in like their late 20s, their late 30s. It's almost as if there'll be like these side comments or these eyes looking at like, what's the issue there? That something must be kind of wrong, that you can't be kind of content in your singleness. Something must be wrong with you, something's gone wrong, or how can I then push them into a relationship? Where then you then have like in church, like the singles group, which is all about pushing people together as opposed to kind of let them enjoy or let them maybe the decision they've made. But there's this onus that if you're a certain age, you're single in a church, you have to be looking for a partner. You can't just be content or happy in your singleness. And I do definitely see what you've just said, Mike. There's this, I don't know where it's kind of come from. I think MT, sorry. But there's definitely like a stigma around it. I don't know if it's kind of church I grew up in, but I see a lot in. Yeah, I think it's the words that we use, right? Like you complete me, you make me whole, or I can't wait for to share the rest of my life with someone. I don't want to die alone. I think it's the words that we use that kind of then, because if you think back to growing up, right, before even coming to this place of, I'm actually content being single, you think about why weren't you content? And for me, it's this whole idea of finding someone to complete me, finding someone to share the rest of my life with, but not recognizing that I have those people already in my family and my friends, But there's obviously also the certain things you can't do with your friends and your family that you want to do with a partner, your husband, your wife. So there also comes that idea of intimacy that you can only have with a certain individual, a certain person.
I agree. I just think I definitely want to get married and will get married.
Will.
Yeah, absolutely. I just need to
find the person
to decide.
Make a choice.
You have to find as well. Find and decide. Yeah. Hallelujah. Maybe I have a spreadsheet right now, and I'm just gonna. I just need to run the right algorithms and come up with the. I'm kidding, of course. No, I think if I can stand up on a little pulpit for a minute, that we do need to fly the flag for singleness. When I meet like young guys who talk about relationships, I don't do it with all of them because some of them, they're not even ready for the chat. But some who are, I do try and curtail their obsession with pretending to be married, which is what a lot of 19-year-olds do.
Yeah.
They kind of get into a relationship and they're like, they just pretend. They're just playing pretend, right? Yeah. And I say it not because relationships are bad, but because I just think we need to rediscover singleness, right? Not as simply the period of time before you get married, but a time where God may have designed, appointed, allocated some tasks for you to be obsessed with. And we don't do that really. I think singleness is just seen as that time where you kind of meander through life until you find somebody. And we just need to rediscover and really champion, young people, 19, 20-year-olds, going on mission, traveling to another country to serve for years, starting ministry, starting things, really getting hungry about something. I was saying this again yesterday, that I just find it so odd that you could have, two 20-year-olds who are, not planning to get married anytime soon. So they're like, oh, maybe 6 years, 5 years, who knows, whatever. And then they're cuddling and watching Netflix. That, for me, that image feels like blasphemy in my head. Because I go, the world's on fire. It is. It's literally, it's on fire. I'm sorry, maybe you don't want to be, you don't want someone to wait, but the world's on fire. You don't care about it. There's nothing in you that beats and that hurts, that's crushed by all the stuff that's happening in the world. You want to have a little retreat. What exactly are you resting from?
Yeah.
That gets me, because I just think so much potential is wasted when people just run away from that singleness period where God's trying to cultivate desires, and they just run away from that and just go, I just want to settle down. And you go, why? You want your whole life to be married, Anyways, sorry. I sense the temperature's changed a bit in here. So I'm going to now close the church and I'm stepping up from the pulpit. I yield my time.
That's a fair point, though.
Bring it back.
No, let's just a little bit more. No, I completely agree with that. No one talks about what you can get up to when you're single. When you're growing up, no one talks about the fact that, when you are single, the period of time in your life before you're married, there's 1,000,001 things that you could be doing for the church. Even in your career, whatever it is, there's so much that you could do with your life that will make you fulfilled. You don't just, and you shouldn't just kind of grow up and wait to be married for you to feel like you're complete in your whole. You're an entire human being who is capable of doing so many things in and outside the church before you get married. So why we never talk about that? Never. And it's a big shame, really.
Yeah. So, one thing I'm kind of thinking of now is I definitely get that, and I hear it, and I get the message all the time that, make the most out of your singleness. But kind of practically speaking, what does that then often look like? So if I'm a single person listening to this now, does that mean I should kind of go to Peru on mission? I should commit more in my local church? What does that actually look like to make the most out of singleness?
It's doing what you want. Right, but obviously within the limits that God has put out. But it's literally living your life. Especially for women, I think a lot of times we wait for a man before we do a lot of things. Simple things like buying a house. If you want to buy a house, buy a house.
I'm triggered by that one.
You'll need to wait for a man. Obviously, you need money.
Come on, say it louder. Come
say
on,
honestly,
it.
Say it louder.
But you don't need to wait to be married for you to be a homeowner. You know, you can dream. Like MT said, travel, go and live in another country, go and live in another city. You can do those things when you're in a relationship, but it's a bit more difficult. But just do the things that you want to do. Look at yourself, study yourself. What kind of person am I? What dreams do I have? And go and pursue those dreams. Don't wait around for a man or a woman to come before you choose to live.
Nah, I hear that. Go for it.
I don't know. I mean, is there much to add to that? When you were talking about things like buying a house, that is one that I can resonate with particularly, because I was looking at buying a house last year, and then I was like, because my parents as well, all their opinions kind of got into my head, and I was like, oh, what if I buy a house now, but then I meet someone, and then he has a house, and then where are we going to live? And it's all these scenarios, and it's just buy the house. Don't. It's planning your life planning my life theoretically, based on, what if I meet someone in this amount of years, then what we're going to just...
And it's even better if you both have a house.
True. But it's like,
more
just
money. Like,
live your life the way you are now. Like,
just go.
Yeah.
Yeah, no. Sorry. Angry uncle.
Oh, God.
Oh, he's back. Here he is.
He's back in the room. No, yeah, I mean, I think you've both spoken excellently about the topic at hand. I agree with everything you said. In terms of practical, I mean, Toye, you've already given two different ways. One is to serve more in the local church, and two is to go on mission. I think those are two good things to do when you're single. Paul has all these wonderful phrases. 1 Corinthians 8, maybe 7 or 8 is pretty much where he talks about being single. I can't remember. I could search it up, but I can't remember fully what he speaks about, or where he says what he says. But he says a number of different things. He speaks about he says it's actually good to be single, and if you're single, you can be focused on God's work and stuff like that. He then says, which is kind of always struck me as odd advice. He was like, if you can't keep if you've got a burning desire, get married.
Yeah. If you must.
Yeah, if you must. Like if you can't quite control the thirst, or I don't know what they call it these days. He says, go and quench that fire when you're in marriage. But if we look at his life, which I think is really an epistle in and of itself, right? Paul was somebody who was single-minded about God's work, who, for whatever reason, decided that and really was resolute in the fact that the work that God has him to do on this earth was far too large to even entertain building a family. He just said, I just can't do that. And when I say family, I mean a biological family, through offspring and stuff like that. He obviously had the church, he had all these other families he's part of. But he was somebody who was single-minded about God's work. And it is important to let Christians know that, I was telling someone this the other day when they were in church worship and they're going to worship nights, but their family was not in the place it should be. And I said, stop going to worship night. Go home. Like your first family, your first ministry is your family. Yeah. Like, go home and be a good son. Like, don't run away from home to go to worship nights. You're going to sing, Your home life is really where you live a life of worship. So, and then, sorry, it was a really interesting conversation, because in a similar way, once we get married and we pursue children, then we have another ministry, and so our attention is somewhat divided at that stage. Now, God's clearly okay with that, because he's built that framework into the Christian walk, that such that you can have a family, and through that serve the local church, and through that serve global mission, so on and so forth. But some people listening to this podcast now have been called to be single, will be single, and that's not a negative pronouncement. That is, if we take Paul's assessment, a great thing. And some will desire marriage, and and they'll pray about it, and God will give them a spouse. But I just think, whilst you have this period you're in, be single-minded about God's work. Get angry about something. Get hungry about something. Get passionate about some injustice in the world. Really hook your life onto something greater than yourself. Pour yourself out. Get so busy that God interrupts you whilst you're working and goes, you need a helpmate. And that's to the guys. And equally, if you're a woman, be so driven, so into God's work that a guy has to almost go through God to get to you. Like he has to jump in the way to interrupt you. Don't just be sitting down like a petal waiting to be picked. It's like, well, get busy. Go do something. Someone said it before. A woman should be so lost in God that the man has to go through to God to find her. And it's like, amen. and I agree. That's the advice I would give to people is, get busy, get doing something. Don't just wait.
Wow. There's one thing you said there right at the very end about how you shouldn't kind of just sit on your chair waiting around. On the kind of the topic of singleness, let's say I'm a single person. How active then should I be in finding a spouse? Let's say I've had that ministry period, I've come back from Brazil, I'm ready to settle down. How active do you think I should be? Or is it the mindset, I just kind of sit around, leave it up to God, God will provide someone, I just should strategically position myself, in the right Mr. Man or the right woman will come along? How active would you guys say Christian should be? dating apps?
I don't know, and I don't know if it's the same for each person. All I know is for me, what I've done in the past is just ask the Holy Spirit, what should I be doing right now? Do you want me to, like, should I be dating right now? Do you want me to just focus on you? Like, are there things that I should be working on in my personality? Like, would you rather I focused on myself? What do you want me to do in my career? And that's what I go off. So I don't. If you want to use dating apps, I have nothing against dating apps or, dating. But I don't think we can say there's one thing that every Christian, one answer for every Christian.
Yeah. I have definitely been on that extreme of I'm just gonna wait on the Lord. But I don't know. It's difficult because being active for people, they say, for women, you put yourself out there, but you don't put yourself out there too much because you don't want to seem desperate. So for me, it's just a confusion of what do all these things mean. So now I'm just like Deb's really just focused on like what MT said. Just live your life for God. And I honestly believe as I do that, I will meet people. And as I meet people, I will meet someone, So it's not necessarily that I'm like out here searching, like who can I be with, but more so just actually minding my business, focusing on my life, focusing on what it is that God wants me to do. And as I do that, I believe that I will meet someone. Yeah,
it's difficult, isn't it? Because you kind of wish there was some sort of verse that said, and this is how you find a wife, kind of thing, because it isn't there. There's clues, Proverbs speaks about us being friendly, but even that's awkward. You don't want to be too friendly as a girl. Okay, why are you checking on me to see if I slept well? It's like, that's none of your business how I slept, that kind of thing. Someone messaged me that once, like, how did you sleep? And I said, and I was like, well, good. I was so offended by that question. I just found it ridiculously intrusive. She obviously took that advice in Proverbs too far. I'm joking, by the way. Nothing wrong with checking up on people's sleep. But there needs to be context. Let's be in a retreat or something. Maybe I slept on the floor. Come on. Anyways, I'm just being silly. I think it's funny because I speak to guys, so I can kind of give guys, guy advice, if you like. I say, which is a bit annoying because it's like, what do girls do with this? But maybe it is comparable too, because this is clearly a kind of wisdom issue, which means you need to be around people who are wise, who've been through things, who understand the Bible. Because I just think with a guy, there's some clues we're given in Scripture, aren't we? One that I heard very early was, purpose before partner. This notion that as a man, I should have a kind of clear sense of purpose before I go out going, I want to invite someone to this dance. It's like, well, where are you going, so to speak? In Proverbs, we're equally advised that, the vision is a principal thing. Where there's no vision, people perish. And so, a man needs to have a compelling vision for his life that he can rally a family behind. So that's another thing. It's like, well, what's your vision? Like, where you going, so to speak. There's a importance, I think, of sustainability and a sense of kind of good stewardship, and that cuts across all things. To what degree is that man a good steward of money? To what degree are they a good steward of talents? All the different gifts God has given them. To what degree are they a good steward of their emotions? And if all that's not in check, I just don't think anyone should be considering a relationship. Now, can you still have a relationship and it be successful? Of course you can. And people often say this, go, well, look at Oprah, look at how she did it. She's been with Stedman for years and they're not married. I go, listen, there's always exceptions to the rule. Yeah. The question here really is about, you're probably not going to be an exception. And I think that's a good framework to work from. Yeah. So that I'm not going to be an exception. Let me just obey the word, be as close to it as possible, because that guarantees my joy. Not my happiness, but my joy. And so those indicators for me give you a sense of when it's the right time. And it's a very hard thing to decipher when it's the right time. But those are helpful. And then as a guy, I'm really interested in kind of clarity and just kind of, if you intend to pursue somebody and that you've been friends with for a long time, like kind of speak to them like, this is how I feel. you know, and you might get I don't feel the same way, and that's happened many times. I've had those experiences. Not, you know, not.
Well, all on the table.
No. It is called on the table, isn't it? So let's put it on the table.
Let's put it on the table.
I haven't had that experience.
You just said
to be
you
clear.
have.
No,
You
but
just
I didn't want to say.
It's on the table now.
But it's
because
been
you
the
put it
other
there.
way round, which I didn't want to say because I thought
Right.
it makes you sound a bit like, oh, people are always asking me, but I'm just too busy. you don't want to sound like that type of person. But it's not the end of the world. And people be like, oh, if I say that my relationship with this person's ruined, not true. Not true. You just kind of go, okay, cool, didn't work, and you move on. But I do think being very intentional is a key thing. And being very kind of practical about here's how I feel, here's what I'm thinking. And I just think we got to make friendship as long as possible. I know some people are like, no, they don't like that model. This is my personal advice. I think friendship is good. Learning to laugh with people, know people without any commitment is a really, really good thing. And then it just makes your marriage all the more sweeter, I think, from the people I know who are married. I know it's very kind of airy-fairy, but that's probably the most useful thing I could say on this topic.
I really like what you said about knowing where you're going, because I think it's like there's nothing more frustrating than a man that doesn't know where he's going, because how am I supposed to now determine if I fit into your story, into the plans that you have, right? And I think maybe for women it's more so when a man does pursue you and he does approach you, asking him what vision do you actually have for your future family, and where is it that you're actually going, and then seeing if you guys are aligned in that. So for me, I'm very big on that compatibility. I think a lot of times people are like, yeah, but we get along. Yeah, we can get along, but we're not compatible. You know, like you can get along with I get along with like a lot of my friends, but that doesn't mean that I would like date them. So I think it's just working out the compatibility. Do we get along in that kind of way? Like, can we go to the same place? If you say, I want to be a missionary, can I say, oh, me too, you know? Yeah.
And I think while you're single is the perfect time for you to figure out exactly what it is, what direction that you want to go in with your life, so that when a man does present, you know, if he lets you know that he's interested in you, you can then say, well, that doesn't really fit with what I want to do with my life. You know, your plan, your vision, I don't really see that for myself, so we're obviously not compatible. So it's important for you to know what you want to do, have an idea of what your future looks like, so that, you know, if you do get approached, then you can actually analyze and make the right decision. Yeah,
it'll make the whole submission aspect a lot easier as well, right? Because you know that it's not about, because like there's this also conversation, can women have it all? It's not the conversation of can I have mine and you have yours, but can we have ours, because we're both going the same place. So I think it's very important to have those conversations.
I actually think I think this is why friendship is important, because some of these things you're talking about, you know, where you go in, do you want to be a missionary? These are things you can pick up from someone as a friend, which will already rule out some people in your head. You know, I literally, it's happened so many times where there's someone I'm like, interesting, you know, I'm interested in this person, kind of. You have a chat and they're like, oh, I could never leave the UK. And I go, well, that's that then.
Well,
never mind.
Or some people are like, oh, I'm definitely living in America. That like I absolutely like all my life, and I'm like, okay, I don't even want to enter the fight with this person to try and convince them otherwise. So, but you don't have to. That's what you pick up in friendship. That's why the friendship phase is so helpful. It's like a runway that you can really go and really ask yourself prayerfully, you know, whatever. Of course, people are scared because they're like, oh, you know, if I don't claim it quickly, someone else will take it. This is when it's great, you know. This is where Calvinism's helpful, you know, because you go, if it's mine, it's gonna be mine. So I don't have to fight for what's not mine. I don't have to. I'm joking. I don't have to fight for what's mine. You know, sorry, for what's already mine. If it's mine, it will be mine. Yeah. No man will take my wife. Okay, so I ain't gotta fight for that. It's gonna be mine. I'm gonna get it in the time. Sorry,
you're American.
I'm gonna
now.
get it in the time I meant to get it. Hallelujah.
Yeah. Thank you for that, MT. And one last question I want to kind of leave with our listeners. I would love for you guys to chip in. is, let's say I'm listening to this episode, I hear what you guys are saying about singleness. It's really powerful. It's a really important time of my life. However, there's this intense longing in my heart to be in a relationship. Like, I just want to be in one. My friends are in a relationship. My parents are telling me to get into a relationship. How do I then kind of curb that passion? How do I deal with this longing of mine to be in a relationship and enjoy this singleness period? What do I do?
How do you do it?
Best question.
Flip that question. Back to you.
I think a lot of the things everyone here has kind of contributed is really, really helpful. Gonna start by saying that. I think everyone's made a really good contribution. I think, here's where stuff like community and like mentorship is so useful, and it comes in because I think a lot of the time we can kind of say, hey, like I really have this passion to be in a relationship. But when you bring that to a friend or like a mentor or a pastor, and they kind of prod you a bit and ask you questions like, why? Like, why do you have this desire to be in a relationship? Like, what's underneath that? And I think oftentimes you find that it's rooted in kind of like I'm bored, for example, and I want someone to chat to at night, which is not a good enough reason to be in a relationship. So I think that the first thing I'd probably tell this person who might have this question is question why this is what you're longing for and why this is what you're looking for. Like, what is the question behind the question? And if it's like a shallow, deep reason for that, then I'd very much question whether you're even in the age bracket or this is something that should be on the forefront of your mind. I would say very much speak to someone about it, get help, speak to a pastor, an older person who's a lot more wiser, and ask them, hey, here's a struggle I have. I know it's wrong and I want to deal with it. And I think the Bible gives us ample information to how to kind of walk that tightrope. I think that's probably where I would start, though, is the question why this is a desire of yours. And I think oftentimes there's a stumbling block there, and it's a shallow reason. But
I think Toye is spoken for the guys. That's I agree wholeheartedly.
Do you know, I think so I can relate to this because recently I found myself really, that desire was really intense. Which, and it, like, most of the time, like, I'm fine, like, it's cool, but recently I found myself where the desire was really intense, and I was really frustrated with God, being like, God, if you don't want me to get married, like, just say that, just get rid of this desire so I can just really enjoy my life. Like, but I then reflected, and I realized that as a result of like Valentine's Day, coupled with a book that I was reading that had like a romance aspect in it, coupled with a TV show that I was watching that had like a romance storyline in it, I found myself really wanting to be in a relationship. So I think be intentional about what you're consuming, be intentional about what you're giving your attention to. And most of the time I am, like, I try not to listen to certain songs or watch certain TV shows, read certain books, etc. But then recently when I found myself watching that TV show and then after Valentine's Day and then reading a book, I was kind of like, it's a recipe for disaster. Yeah. So you do have to be intentional about what you're consuming, pay attention to how much you're interacting with, like, you know, this whole relationship talk and this whole marriage talk. Be careful not to idolize it, because that will leave you in a position where it's on your mind constantly, and then that desire is just like overwhelming. So when I realized that, I had a conversation with my friends. So what you said about community is really important, and then just take it to God and like pray, and, you know, let him know that this is how you feel right now, and just let him know that, you know, it's really difficult right now, but I do want to be married, but I trust God, that, you know, trust God and let him know that this is my desire and I trust that you're going to fulfill it if that's your will, and just hand it over to him and then just go back and live your life, you know.
I do both of those things, why, and watching what I consume, and also just being focused on what I have right now, right? It's just so easy to sometimes just be so consumed by what you don't have. So just gratitude, like, God, I'm actually grateful for health. I'm grateful for my family, for my friends, and really exploring those relationships more, because I have the time to. I have the time to spend with my mom and my dad and my siblings. So really focusing on what do I have and being grateful for that, and not wishing for something that I don't know what it will be. So not rushing into it, because marriage is not a small commitment. It takes a lot to be married to someone, and as we all probably know, the divorce rates are like really high. And personally, I'm trying to stay married, right? I am going to remain married if I do ever get married. So just recognizing as well that it's not something that I can rush into if I really want to stay married. That I have to be in a place where it's time for me to be married. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's also right. One thing that's jumped into my head as well is just investing in your friendships. I think a lot of the time, the reason why we have this longing to be in a relationship is because we're not satisfied in our friendships.
Yeah.
And a lot of the things you desire, like deep intimacy, you can have that in genuine friends.
Yeah.
And I think, we need to kind of hold a high premium on friendships a lot more in our generation. But yeah, we will park it there for time's sake. But thank you guys so much for being at the table today and sharing some wisdom. That's a new, I don't know, that was off script, but I think it's going to catch on. I really like it. But yeah, thank you for joining us at the table. It's a great episode. Thank you guys at home for listening as well. Please do make sure to like, share, subscribe, and you can catch us same time next week with a brand new episode of On the Table. See you soon.
Hey, I hope you've been blessed by what you've heard today. And if you have, I'd love to encourage you to partner with us here at OGGM as a monthly giver. At OGGM, we're a charity funded by the donations of people such as yourselves, and that enables us to do the varying work that we do, from retreats to podcasts to mission trips to homeless outreaches and so much more. So if you'd like to give, please click the Project 1000 link in the description below. Thank you.